What's happening, everyone? Pragmatic Addict here. So, for someone who's not a huge fan of the Universal Monsters movies, whether that be Frankenstein or werewolves or The Mummy, just monsters that have gotten endless movies never really creeped me out. The second I saw a single smidge of this film, I couldn't wait to see it, and it did creep me out, to say the least. Which is just what you want to hear with this being the next horror film from this director, but also when you hear that this director was actually in talks to continue on with the Evil Dead franchise, but passed because he wanted to put that absolute brutality and gnarliness into a Mummy movie. Which I will say, I actually was thinking this film was looking even more intense than Evil Dead Rise, which is really crazy to think because of that particular film's absolute gnarliness, brutality, but also this is, again, a Mummy movie. Again, just a property that has gotten endless movies and was never exactly known for being a terrifying property. I was so curious to see what we would get out of this one with how unforgivable the horror in this film looked and actually was said to be, which also had this film just looking to incorporate all kinds of many horror subgenres, from possession to haunted house to a missing persons case, along with a pretty ballsy runtime as well. And I have just seen Lee Cronin's The Mummy, so let's talk about it. The younger daughter of a journalist disappears into the desert without a trace. 8 years later, the broken family is shocked when she's returned to them. However, what should be a joyful reunion soon turns into a living nightmare as she starts to transform into something truly horrifying. So first off, love the cinematography. That may be the first thing that actually stood out to me, which is also just a standout in the film. It's a gorgeous film to look at, the cinematography with every tone, scenery with this film's setting, but also the horror. The first of that you get in this intro, the type of it, the directing with that as well, very reminiscent of Evil Dead Rise, like you see in this film's trailer. And the sound design with it, whether that be bodily horror or some ominous buildup for the classic horror property this film is. With this intro, you're told three things. The movie's going to be beautiful to look at. The main thing you're probably here for, the horror, but also horror coming from Lee Cronin, are all going to deliver. But now meeting our main characters, this is when I started to get a little bit worried. Just the writing illustrating your classic little family, everything from the character writing to the corny familial humor. I just kind of didn't care about these people immediately. But also, the more characters that came in as well, whether that be dialogue from someone over the phone or jumping a little bit further here to once like this little girl goes missing and you're meeting some police. Just majority of the characters we got were really bland, uninteresting, unlikable, and getting to the point where this little girl does go missing felt extremely abrupt. And the actual scene of her going missing pretty clearly and distractingly ripped straight out of It. Switched up at the end for a more witchy fairy tale execution. It was just weird. Didn't feel like the intro of this movie and this part were of the same film. Which I just realized, I literally just said, yeah, the beginning of the film basically tells you right away, the horror's gonna deliver. With some exceptions. And just the acting from everyone following this, and again, their writing, to also abruptly just straight up jumping 8 years later, just getting into the actual movie so far wasn't looking too good, which ultimately made me very nervous about this film's beefy runtime. But the first horror that comes back in, pretty unexpected first horror, taking place in the middle of the day, being something that's just kind of in the background that slowly comes into frame, completely silent. And this, along with, again, the particular setting and the cinematography, brings both points that I stated earlier back in together. The horror delivers and the film's great to watch. At least visually. And the immediate horror when this mummified Katie officially comes in, the first imagery when the parents are first being introduced to her, the sound design again, the horror is a standout in this movie, almost always delivers. And with this being the meat now of the movie and how, for the most part, well delivered the horror has been, despite what I thought of the overall characters so far, the idea of this girl's case, the familial trauma it's caused, this being the first time they've seen her in 8 years, also the improved acting around this point, particularly with Jack Reynor, I did have both a feeling of, okay, hopefully this is a film that just had a case of a rough first act, but also I do kind of care about this family now. And also along with this being the actual meat of the film now that we're in, the more you see of Katie, like at first just her demeanor and her performance with that, really effective build-up. And this goes for the overall tone as well when she first gets to the house and this entire family is now seeing her for the first time. The overlapping conversations of everyone, each person's reactions seeing her in this case for the first time, the specific focus on whatever this thing is, this grieving family just let into their home, observing all this, some specific focus on prayer coming out of one of the family members, maybe a specific family member noticing something definitely isn't right about this person that nobody else seems to notice. Feels kind of like a setup for a straight up exorcism movie. And the first night with this mummified Katie being in this home, the sound design again that illustrates unknown horror, things we're hearing but don't know what they are. It really was that haunted house horror incorporation I felt would also be a part of this film. And the directing really stood out with this scene. The parents becoming aware of the horror, trying to locate Katie, it was really engaging. Fast-paced, which I really didn't expect. And the increase in familial stress from here, everyone becoming aware together, and the further increase in horror as well as acting, I did officially care about this family. But also, I actually felt really bad for this possessed kid, regardless of how little the first act did for me, which is when you actually see her as a human being. Just knowing this was once an innocent little girl and this possessed girl's performance, like once this film got to the meat, my entire mood changed. It was officially the film I wanted. I was like, okay, you can give me that 2+ hour horror film now. But I will sadly finally say, just all in all, when we're not getting this Evil Dead mummy hybrid, the movie is just kind of there. Like once the story starts to go further into Katie's backgrounds, it just kind of comes in, and how it pushes the story forward feels a bit random, easy, and important characters and ones that I was actually pretty attached to just kind of disappear. And with how abrupt and easy this came in, but also dropping these characters, I just wasn't that invested. But also things just kind of start to ease up. The story, even horror, just start to feel more generic. But once we're through this middle portion and we reach now the final act, kicking things off with a specific setting, and this being in fact the final act, you do just have a feeling of, okay, so we're back, right? We're back. Which this setting brings in memorable horror, uncomfortable buildup with things where you are just kind of like, okay, I guess we'll see where this goes? Though how things escalate was a bit too cartoonish, not as well executed, but still, the variety of horror we get in this setting, everything from gross out to cartoonish to actually fucked up, was still fun. And the final reveals we get for the story and where this family is currently at by this point, it hits. I again just really wanted to root for these people, and the directing, acting buildup with all this was really engaging. It felt like a finale with all this. And the final horrors we got in this movie really felt the most thrilling. The stunts, effects were the biggest, even if they weren't the gnarliest, but also just the horror figures here, without spoiling, probably the creepiest shit in the film as well. Though I will lastly say, this all does go on for quite a bit amount of time, where I did feel like I wasn't getting as much story, not fully seeing the goal, where it did just simply feel like the director just wanted to give a finale full of the main thing that most people came to this movie for, which, yeah, was fine, but it, again, did get to a point where, again, I wasn't seeing much go as far as the actual conclusion for this film. And overall, I'll give Lee Cronin's The Mummy a strong mix to a pass. But yes, guys, with all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I'll see you guys in the next video very soon. Take care and have a great night.